OP's parents are giving them an ultimatum. Pay for our house or else. This could go bad fast. Let me know what you'd do. Hi everyone. My parents, 66 mom, 65 dad, are looking to retire and are about to sell their house. They'll most likely get around $500,000 from the sale, which they'll put towards the new house. We all used to live with them, my family and my sisters, but we've all moved out, so they can't afford the current mortgage payment. According to their calculations, the new mortgage would be $100,000, and the monthly payment would be $1,000, not including property taxes, utilities, and HOA. Last night, they gave us 3 options. They do a reverse mortgage, and we don't get anything from their inheritance. They move out of state. I don't consider this an option at all. Or we pay split the mortgage payment, $500 each. Apparently, based on what they'll be getting from Social Security and their 401k, they won't have much to live off of after paying the mortgage payment. My dad's full Social Security retirement is age 67, and if he works for another 2 years, he'll get another $700 to $800 a month. But he obviously doesn't seem keen on the idea, especially since the location they're looking to move to will turn his 10-minute commute into a 30-minute to 1-hour one. They've told us to think of this as an investment and that the property value will go up over time, which I'm sure it will since we're in California. It just seems like a long commitment, like over 15 years, and I eventually want to buy my own home. I'm 29, about to turn 30. I'm married and have 2 kids. I make a good income, $210,000, not including bonuses, so we can afford the $500 a month. The other worry I have is on my sister's side, as their situation isn't really as stable as ours, and I could end up having to pay the full $1,000 myself. I'm leaning towards helping them out, helping myself out as well. They've done so much for me, and I feel obligated. I'm just curious if there's any other options they have. There's $500,000 equity in their current house, and I feel like paying the mortgage is the best thing to do for myself and them as well, but I just want to make sure I'm making the right decision. Do you agree with this comment? What happens if down the road they need a nursing home or long-term care, and they need to sell the house you've been paying for to fund it? You should probably talk with a lawyer who handles estate planning. Does this feel like that they're just being taken advantage of? Like, hey, we're going to pull your inheritance, or you have to pay for this, or we're just going to leave. And I just don't know. There's so many things that they need to lawyer up and just get this thing handled carefully. It could go wrong fast. What do you think? Pro-divorce, posted by a deleted account. Throwaway, as this might not make me very popular, even in pro-revenge. This all happened to me a few years ago. I told a friend the story of my divorce, and I was told to share. This all started a few years ago. I thought we were happy. We were your usual suburban professional couple. Financially secure, healthy, good marital life, 2 kids, 14 female, 9 male at the time. I thought we had a healthy social life. We were going through one of your typical married couple rough patches. Both of us were working long hours, not spending enough time together, and we were going through some developmental problems with my son, and tensions in the house were running a little high. I noticed that she was spending a lot more time on her phone, texting with her girlfriends. I didn't think much of it. I started making a much more concerted effort to get out of work when I could, help around the house, and be more emotionally available. But over the course of a few weeks, the gulf just kept getting wider. I ended up accidentally finding some messages when I charged up an old iPad for my son to use. Her Facebook Messenger was still logged in, and there were a lot of highly questionable messages with a guy from her hometown, who I will call Jim Bob Cooter, or JBC for short. The messages weren't completely inappropriate, but I could tell there were quite a few missing based on the times and context of the messages. I made a mental note to keep an eye on this and went about trying to fix things up. The next day after, I took the day off to knock out some projects that I thought would make her happy and left her some sweet notes reminding her how much I appreciated her, and she was once again in the corner of the living room texting her girlfriends. I took the boy's iPad to the office, opened up Facebook Messenger, and watched in real time as my wife tore me down. Her and JBC were making fun of me. All of my flaws and insecurities and secrets that I entrusted to my partner were now fodder on her and JBC. Not only that, but while there weren't outright inappropriate messages, there was an undertone to the whole conversation, especially when she was bashing my performance. I managed to take some screenshots, but missed a good bit of the messages because as the conversation was unfolding, she was deleting them. I wasn't emotionally capable of confronting her. I stayed in the office until she was asleep and had a couple drinks. I took off the next day and spent some time soul-searching, drinking, and trying to figure out what to do. The wife came home and wanted to know what was wrong, and I just copped out and I told her that I had a bad day. A couple minutes later, I was watching the iPad as the train wreck kept unfolding. So, began a couple solid weeks of taking screenshots, drinking, and detaching myself from the relationship. I knew there was no going back from this. The messages were now overtly dirty, with my wife completely into it, and JBC was sprinkling in "I love yous." I consulted a lawyer and got my options, and started moving forward. Here's where everything got absolutely surreal. Watching the messages, I found out JBC was coming to town to spend a weekend of quality time with my wife in a pretty nice hotel. I was missing a good bit of the info. They must have had a phone conversation about it at some point, but I was able to infer enough to get the when and the where. Sure as heck, the next day, the wife is buttering me up and wanting to take a spa weekend with the girls to relax, and when she gets back, we can really focus on our marriage. I go with it all the way. It's the greatest idea she's ever had, and I'll do anything to get us back on track. I get with the lawyer and have him draft a strong separation agreement stating that she would move out. She would get weekend visitation, no child support in the interim until the divorce is final. Then I sat through the most agonizing 2 weeks of my life. After all this, most of my feelings for her are completely gone, and I'm just seething with anger like I've never felt before. D-Day arrives. I take the day off work. I withdraw half of any money in my accounts that were joint on, leave her half alone. I had already redirected my paycheck to a new bank. I close our money market account and get a cashier's check for her half and deposit my half in my new account. I stop at Office Max and print out about 75 pages of Facebook Messenger screenshots, and I kill time because I don't want to be at home. She texts me that she's taking off and that she loves me. I tell her to have fun. I show up at the hotel at about 8:30 and call the wife's phone from the lobby. It goes straight to voicemail. They're probably already at it. Whatever. I walk up to the front desk and ask if I can use the phone to be connected to JBC's room. It rings 3 times, and he picks up. "Hello? JBC, can you send my wife down to the lobby, please?" "I don't know what you're talking about, bro." "Okay, then. I guess I'll have to call Mrs. JBC and get her down here." Totally a bluff. I mean, I knew he was married, and I knew her first name, but that was it. JBC is inaudible. He's shuffling. He's in panic. "You got 5 minutes. Click. Not even 2 minutes later, my wife comes walking out of the elevator, looking a little flustered. I sit her down in the corner of the lobby. She starts spewing some BS saying that it's not what it seems and blah, 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 blah. I say, "Look, I'm not here to argue. The things that are said in this pile of papers are what's going on. The only way I'm not giving a copy of this to daughter, your parents, and emailing it to everyone we know is if you move out immediately." My wife was very prideful. The daughter was going through a rebellious teen phase, and her knowing would probably have forever killed their relationship. Wife was also her parents' golden child, and she always worried about what they thought of her. I didn't have much leverage, and shame was my only card to play. Also, her professional life is built up around her image, so I knew she would protect that at all costs. She's sniffling and mumbling, just inaudible. I say, "This is a check for half of the money market account. I've withdrawn my half of the money from all the other joint accounts. You should have more than enough to get a place." She starts to cry a little. I could almost see the different thoughts and waves of emotions going through her, but now was the time to keep pressing. "Here's a separation agreement that I think is more than fair considering what's going on. I'm going to need you to look this over, sign it, and leave it at the house when you get your stuff. Do you want to look through these screenshots?" "No," she says. "Okay, go have fun with JBC. Don't come back to the house or I'm going to send this," holding up a ream of screenshots, "to everyone." I bounce out of the lobby and I can hear her start to have a breakdown. I get to the car and drive off to a parking lot and have my own crying rage fit. Previously, I would have cried in front of her and yelled and whatnot, but I managed to get my crap together enough to pull it off. I don't know what she did that night or over the weekend. She texted and called over and over wanting to talk. I just turned the phone off, and by the time Monday afternoon rolled around, there were movers getting her stuff and she delivered the agreement. I let her have a talk with the kiddos, basically saying, Mommy and Daddy need some time apart and we still love you, and so on and so on. Standard divorce talk. After a week, she wants to have a real talk for the first time. I oblige her because I've already got my crap together and I've got an idea of what I want, but I should hear her out. She's so sorry. She wants another chance. She wants her family back. She'll do anything. She's on her knees crying into my lap. I have no intention of ever taking her back. I tell her that she needs to set up marriage counseling on her own at a time that works for me. I tell her that I can't live with her, but she should be around the children to try and maintain a relationship with them. So starts our new normal of her coming over to the house, cooking, and having dinner with the kids 3 nights a week. She always saved me a plate, and I made myself scarce. Her cleaning the house and doing the kids' laundry, and then heading back to her place. We went to counseling. It consisted of her working through the issues with the therapist, trying to figure out why she did it, her begging for forgiveness, and me stoically playing the victim. I was never going to give her another chance. All I wanted to do was kill time, establish myself as a primary caregiver to the kids, and establish her as not having residency in the house. After a few months, I go to my own therapist and get diagnosed with depression and PTSD. I ask my work if it's possible to go part-time for the foreseeable future to deal with personal issues, and it's no big deal. After 6 months of therapy, I told her that I couldn't forgive her right now and that I wanted an amicable divorce, but she is still the love of my life and maybe someday we could give it another try. She was devastated, but agreed to the divorce if I promised to try again someday. Once the divorce was filed, I needed the kids to want to stay with me. I left a Google search for How to Survive Your Wife's Infidelity up on the shared PC at home, and I left some printed out infidelity articles not so hidden in the kitchen. My daughter found them and came to me crying. I told her that she wasn't supposed to find those, that Mom made a mistake, that her mom still loves her, and that I would always be there for her. My daughter, who used to hold my wife in such high regard, now wouldn't talk to her without screaming, and it crushed her. Not surprisingly, when the court needed statements from the kids a few months later, little brother followed big sister's lead, and they both wanted to stay with Dad in the house that they grew up in. When the divorce was finalized, I got to the house. I had to buy out some of her equity, but that's okay. I got primary custody of the kids. I got awarded generous child support due to the difference in our incomes due to me working part-time. Now, for the last 2 years, I've got to live in the house with my kids, work part-time, get the now ex to subsidize it for me, and when she takes the kids over the weekends, I get to have my fun with the Tinderellas and some FWBs that I've cultivated. In the eyes of my kids, I'm the patron saint of fatherhood for taking the high road and always being there. In the eyes of my ex, I'm the one that got away that she will always pine for, and I get the bonus of having her come over for stuff whenever I want it by dangling that carrot of maybe getting back together. But that is never going to happen. You only want me working part-time in case there isn't too much work next year? Sure, posted by Fletcher Marcan. I must confess that I have a profound respect for people who do not take crap from their employers. You are my heroes, and so I hope my story can help someone else. Okay, so first, some necessary background info. I live in a small country, and I'm an engineer in a very niche field. Where I live, there are about 15 to 18 people in my field in the whole country. Also, unions are a good thing here, and most companies are fine with unions. The employee benefits from this, but so does the employer, since the rules of the game are very clear. Clear for most people, as my employer was about to find out. My story goes like this, and it took place late 2019 until late 2020. My team consisted of 3 people, me included, and one on our team, our mentor, was ready to retire 2 years prior to this happening, but he stayed on because, well, codependence issues, I guess. We had 10 to 12 years experience each. We were just younger and more inexperienced than our mentor, who has 40 plus years experience. I really envisioned us taking over the team soonish. Company is a large actor where I live, but things had not been going too great for the shareholders for some 6 months prior to all this happening. Knowing this, I decide I'll not ask for a raise in my annual performance review to show that I am a team player, and I explicitly state this to my boss's boss, Mr. V. All is fine and well for 3 months. Then, the bomb drops. One fine autumn day in 2019, I was called to a meeting with my boss, Mrs. G. Mrs. G told me that they didn't expect there to be enough work to go around for my team next year. The pandemic had not struck yet, so that was not the reason. So they wanted to cut me down to a part-time job, working only 80%, which that would be about 4 days a week, starting 3 months hence. I immediately asked if this is also the case for my other coworker and if our mentor was going to retire. Well, yes, but no. My coworker would also be offered 80%. Our mentor was going to be working 60%. And I'm like, what? He really wants to retire, you know? Well, he is not yet, says Mrs. G, because of reasons and stuff. Okay, so I signed the new contract, but I feel bad about it, since I was really trying to be a team player and did not feel my employer was taking responsibility for us employees, but only thinking of the shareholders. I also get the feeling that they do not see me or my coworker taking over the team anytime soon, despite us not being novices in the field. I immediately start planning for the future. After this happens, I start asking around if other employees are also facing part-time employment due to no projects in 2020. As one does, you want to know how others are doing, right? Nobody else is getting part-timed. And everybody else is appalled. Just us three. We are singled out for some reason. Some of our colleagues even say that they have had stints of no work for months without any actions taken in this regard. There is now general displeasure in my team towards our employer. Since our mentor just wanted to retire and let us do the job, there would have not been any reason to have us younger engineers working part-time, really. But no, because of reasons and stuff. Okay, so what to do? I have a family and 2 kids and mortgages in the lot, and this will be a blow to the family income. So I start planning to do some work on the side. Since I'm an engineer, I can do consulting, right? My employment contract says no. But if my employer cannot or will not offer me a full-time job, the union contracts say I can do what I want with the rest of my time, and my employer cannot interfere. I also have the right to refuse more work from my employer because I may have other obligations. Me, 1. Employer, 0. I open up my own company, buy a domain, make a web page, start calling and writing and letting people know that I'm available for consulting. Of course, I checked with the union lawyers beforehand if this was okay, which it was. Totally fine. They told me that since my employer laid me off and rehired me part-time, I could do what I wanted with the rest of my time. This would not have been the case if I had requested part-time employment. Great, I go to work for myself then. Me too, 0 employer. Almost immediately after our new contracts take effect, my employer starts noticing there is more than enough work to go around and asks me to work more hours. No, I say. Unfortunately, I have other obligations. I really didn't. I was just making a stand and forcing them to recognize their own mistake. Time passes. My savings account drains in about 3 months' time, but we managed to cut down on our expenses, so it's not rough seas, but still not smooth sailing by far. Income is a bit on the low side, although I managed to get some consulting done in my own time. I switched from sourdough bread to stale, boring white bread. Go from good beer to Bud Light to no beer. What you have to do, you have to do. No more fine roasted coffee from the small shop on the corner. Only what sludge I can get at the supermarket and brew at home. Ugh. But this is temporary, I tell myself. And then it happens. I get a big job and start moonlighting to get it done, working evenings and weekends. And this is when the crap hit the fan because word got out. I get an angry phone call from Mrs. G's boss, Mr. V, and we have a heated conversation over what I can and cannot do. The conversation was something like this in short terms. Mr. V says, "Think of how this reflects on our company." I say, "Well, that's not my concern here, Mr. V. I have bills to pay and mouths to feed." "This is not what we had in mind." "Hey, you laid me off, man. You should know the rules of the game. You cannot dictate what I do in my spare time. Perhaps you should have thought it through when you reduced my hours. You think I was happy to lose income and would not try to remedy my financial situation? You can work more hours for us then." "Hey, I have other obligations now. I can't let down my customers." Angrily, Mr. V says, "You should consider your next steps carefully, young man." "Mr. V, I shall do that. Thank you for calling, you pompous prick," I silently added. What then followed was a phone call from me to my union explaining the situation. Later that week, my employer got a phone call from the union lawyers who spoke to Mr. V in HR department, telling them what they can and cannot do. And I just kept working for myself. Mr. V is now very unhappy and stops greeting me when we pass each other in the hallway. Me, 3, 0 employer. 2 months later, I hand in my resignation. 3 months after that, I'm gone. And to rub salt in the wounds, something remarkable happens. My coworker, not our mentor mind you, asked if I would want to partner up and start a new company together. Yes, I say, for it was a great idea. Coworker hands in resignation a month after I handed mine in, and we start working in our own company full time. People that depend on our services are very happy about us entering the market as independent consultants. Business takes off. Me/us, 4, 0 employer. The aftermath. My former employer has had an opening for our jobs since August 2020. Our mentor told me last month that he has, finally, put down his foot and is retiring at the end of the year as he's turning 70 soon. They will thus have gone from 3 people in a very niche field to 0 in less than 2 years because of bad managerial decisions. It did not come as a surprise to me that there were no others available in the market. Since it's a niche field, I know almost every person personally, so I could have told them that everybody seemed happy with their current employer. Being a manager must suck. Oh wait, that's me now. A trip around the world in 80 minutes, posted by Joe Saotom. This story comes from when I worked in an inbound call center. I handled escalation calls. When someone called in regarding their service plan with complaints that cannot be handled with a regular agent's authority, or the caller demanded to speak with a supervisor or manager, the call got transferred into my team's call queue and one of us handled it. A little background. I was born and raised in the Southwest. When I was a wee little child, I spoke with a very heavy stutter. It took several years and lots of patience on my mother's part to teach me how to speak normally. The outcome was that I had to enunciate all my words carefully and thus spoke without any hint of a local accent. Later, during my middle school days, I got teased a lot for not having a proper accent. So I decided to teach myself how to speak with the proper accent. I watched a lot of my dad's old black and white westerns to learn the lingo. Then I started talking like Scotty from the original Star Trek series. It was fun, so I started copying other accents from TV and movies. I had over a dozen, including German Sergeant Schultz, I Know Nothing, pirate and badly dubbed Chinese Kung Fu, with lots of pauses, simple phrases, and every sentence ends in ha. One bad side effect came about though. Often, when I'm around a person with a heavy accent, I subconsciously begin to mimic their accent. I don't realize I'm doing it until it's pointed out, and usually the other person thinks I'm making fun of them or something. To avoid getting punched in the face, I have to do some quick explaining without the borrowed accent. So, the call. A call comes into my queue, and I answer it as normal. Kind of. I had been joking around with my supervisor while using an Indian accent, so when I answered the call, I was still using the accent. The woman caller was immediately furious. She started screaming at the top of her lungs that she had specifically demanded to speak with someone who spoke English, not a... Well, let's just say her choice of words lay heavy on the racial side, and leave it at that. Realizing my error, I dropped the accent and tried to talk with the lady normally, but she would have none of it. She continued on a horrible racial diatribe about foreign call center workers, how there wasn't any proper American English speakers anymore, and cussing me up one side and down the other. Now, I've handled a lot of angry calls by small-minded people, but there is one hot button I will not tolerate. The caller started insulting my parents. You wish to talk to someone who speaks English, correct? I broke in, dropping back into the Indian accent at the same time. Yes. Not a problem, I said. I'll transfer you to someone who speaks English. But I must warn you, do not disconnect from the call for any reason whatsoever. We are experiencing a rather large call volume at this time. You are currently at the top of the queue. But if you disconnect and call back, you will be all the way back at the bottom of the call line. And you do not want that, correct? Gosh, no! Very well, please stay on the line and the next available English speaker will be with you shortly. Have a most pleasant day. And then I put her on hold. It should be noted that we were not supposed to put callers on hold, but I did so that she would 1. Think she was being transferred, and 2. Make her listen to the horrible hold music. Placing a caller on hold immediately sent up a red flag in the call monitoring software. Normally, a supervisor would come storming over and demand answers. My supervisor, however, had his cubicle right next to mine and had been leaning over the top when I had initially fumbled the call. He had also patched his phone into my line and heard everything the caller had said. "What are you doing?" he asked, while smiling a wicked smile. Exactly what she demanded. She wants to talk with someone who speaks English, then that's exactly what she's going to get, I replied with my own crap-eating grin. After 5 minutes, I took the call off hold and answered with my best Russian accent in place. Then on hold again. 5 minutes later, German accent, and then French, then Swedish, then Mario Brothers Italian, and so on and so forth. For an hour, I kept transferring this racial witch, each time answering the phone with both good, bad, and horrible accents speaking English. I thought for sure she would have caught on around the 30-minute mark when I spoke pirate. She didn't, so I continued. After about 1 hour and 20 minutes of sending this woman on a verbal tour of the world, the woman was sobbing so hard I could barely make out her distressed words. So I went in for the kill. I answered the phone with a thick southern drawl. She was so happy. She spent a good 10 minutes telling me what a horrible experience she has had just to finally talk with someone who spoke proper English. I asked her what I could do for her, and she told me what her issue was. It was something so simple that one of the regular agents could have handled it in less than 2 minutes. Finishing up the call, the woman once thanked me for speaking proper English. I dropped back into the Indian accent. "Not a problem at all, madam. It was a pleasure to handle your call. You know, it's funny. You sound just like a woman I spoke to an hour ago. Isn't life strange?" With a satisfied smile, I hung up during the scream of choking rage. The HOA finds me, but I'm not even in the HOA. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss the fallout of this one, and I'll see you there.